Thank you. To the Prime Minister. Since we're hearing about who can tell the Australian people what they are planning, since you are in government and the climate is on track to 3 degrees of heating on current emission reduction commitments, to ensure sensible economic management of Australia's economy, has the government assessed the cost of jobs and the economy of the outcome of 3 degrees of heating, and what is that cost?
The Prime Minister has the call.
He must have written. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for her question. The issues that she has raised is why our government is taking action on climate change. That is why, Mr. Speaker. That is why we signed up to the Paris Agreement, Mr. Speaker, and we've made our commitment
to reduce
will
just pause for a second. The member for Corangamite will leave under Standing Order 94A. Yes. Yes, that's right. I asked you to cease interjecting. I warned you. You kept interjecting, and now you're leaving. That's the way it works. The Prime Minister has the call.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That is why our government is taking action on climate change. That is why we signed up to the Paris Agreement, and that's why we're meeting our targets. As I said, we're meeting the Kyoto targets, which those opposite, I must note, that when we announced 10 years ago, Mr. Speaker, our plan to achieve the Kyoto emissions reduction targets, it was mocked by those opposite. They said you couldn't do it without a carbon tax. It was mocked by others around this place, Mr. Speaker, but I tell you what, it wasn't mocked by the Australian people, because they backed that plan at the 2013 election, 7 years out from that 2020 target, and we delivered on that commitment, and we have not only beaten, but we have beaten our targets.
The Prime Minister
by
will
2020.
resume his seat. The member for Solomon is warned. The member for Warringah on a point of order.
Yes, relevance. The question went to what is the cost.
Yes, as I often point out, member for Warringah can resume her seat. The question had a long preamble, and what did? I mean, it did. I mean, I don't want to have an argument with the member for Warringah, but I listened very carefully, and there was quite a long preamble before she got to a very specific question. If you need the answer to be tightly to the specific question, you need to not have the broad preamble that allows the minister or the Prime Minister answering it to range more widely. The Prime Minister is in order.
Speaker, it is because we do understand there are costs associated with climate change that we indeed are taking action on climate change to reduce emissions, Mr. Speaker. But I tell you what also we need to do to take action on climate change, and that is we need to build the resilience of this country for the climate that we need to live in, that we will live in, for the economy that we must grow in this climate and in the environment we are in, Mr. Speaker, and we need to put in place the adaptation measures to ensure that Australians can thrive in the climate we will live in, Mr. Speaker. While taking the action, the necessary action when it comes to emission reduction, we will also take action on building the dams, which means climate action now, Mr. Speaker. The hazard reduction, which is climate action now, Mr. Speaker, just as emissions reduction is climate action now. And we will take those actions because we understand the risks and the need to take action in relation to those risks. Those opposite, Mr. Speaker, don't offer any plans. They don't offer any policies. They have an uncosted, glib.
No, I just say to the Prime Minister, members can cease interjecting just for a second. It's very difficult for the Prime Minister to go to the policies of those opposite when, one, he wasn't asked about it, and two, the question was from an independent. So the Prime Minister either needs to wrap his answer up, or the Prime Minister has the call.
I'm happy to do that, Mr. Speaker. I'm asked about the costs. I'm asked about the costs of climate, Mr. Speaker. What I can assure the Australian people is they will always pay the price of Labor's failed climate policies.